On behalf of our team at the Regina District Industry Education Council, I'd like to welcome Sandy Redden. Sandy is a speech pathologist, and she's here this afternoon to talk about her career path and the work that she does, the training that they receive, and the career opportunities, salary expectations, and working conditions of a speech language pathologist. She is a leader in her field, and we're very lucky to have her here. Just a reminder that if you're watching this presentation, please go to our website at www.rdiec.ca or click on the QR code on the poster, and that will take you to the website. And then if you click on the survey link, very short survey there that if you fill out, automatically enters you for a $50 gift certificate that will be drawn at the end of each month. So once again, I want to thank Sandy Redden for taking the time out today to talk to us about the work and the career path that she does. So I'll turn over to Sandy.
Thank you, Gord. I appreciate the opportunity today to speak with everyone about speech language pathology and how I came upon this and the benefits to being in this field. So we'll get right onto it as we head into things. I'll just take a little bit of time to tell you about myself. I've been fortunate enough to work in healthcare, both in Saskatchewan and in Alberta. And before leaving Saskatchewan, I actually started to look into private practice. As I worked in healthcare, it was a very enjoyable employment setting. However, I knew there was more that I wanted to do, and I really wanted to be seeing clients enough to make a difference. And sometimes those caseloads in healthcare are quite large, and you do what you can, but I wasn't really my path. I wanted to be make sure I was being effective. And so, kind of connected with some people in Saskatoon who were in private practice at that time. And that was a long time ago, 20 years ago or more, or 25 years ago, probably. And then when I moved to Alberta, I worked in healthcare for a couple of years and then decided to go into private practice. So currently, I'm the owner of Speech and Language Works, and I have a team of people that work with me. And I have been working for 30 years, but my business has been in place for 20 years. We are located here in Medicine Hat. We have an office downtown, and currently I'm working there. I'm in the community, I'm in homes, and I'm also working from home as well. So it's been quite a journey over the last year, actually, but a journey of 30 years so far. So when we look at speech pathology, there's a lot of different options that you have within this field. In Canada, there is no undergrad program for communication disorders or speech language pathology. So if you want to stay in Canada, you will look at getting a degree in a related field, psychology, education, anything like that. And I also think that there are people who have a degree in an unrelated field, but then decide to apply to a master's program in speech language pathology. In Canada, UBC, U of A, U of T, and Dalhousie University are the university programs that I'm aware of. I don't think anybody else has added anything in. If you look at the US, where I went in Minot, North Dakota. There is an undergrad program of 4 years in communication disorders, and then you apply to your master's program. And I don't think that they have this anymore, but there was an actual program where you came in with maybe a 3-year degree from something in Canada, then you did an extra year of undergrad down there, and then you could apply for your master's program. There are many programs in the US, highly rated, both Canada and the US. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in this field, to look around and whether you want to stay in Canada or look to going to the US. All of that training transfers back into Canada. So you have options, and whether you want to do, excuse me, that undergrad in speech pathology or another degree, but then looking at, it's going to take you 6 years for sure to get this education. And then once you're done, in order to become a licensed speech and language pathologist, you have to apply to your provincial body. And in Saskatchewan, I'm fairly sure that it's SASOPA, and it's an association, but has college-like characteristics. And in Alberta, we have ACSOPA, which is our college and our regulating body. And so they require that we maintain our certification, our license every year, and provide the necessary documentation. So, yeah, and our work. This field is very wide. We do a lot of different things, and oftentimes you end up specializing in a certain area. And then if you feel like you need a change, or you want to do something different, or you're changing employment, you can, with lots of extra study, you can become more of a specialist in another area. So you're not restricted to just one area, but you want to work in your field where you are the most competent. So basically our work is consultation, meeting with families, meeting with professionals, discussing things, deciding on if an assessment is needed. Once that assessment is completed, both informal and formal testing, we would look at treatment. And a big part of our work is caseload management, whether that's documentation, stats, writing reports, all of those kind of things, scheduling. So that's a big piece. And then also promotion of speech language pathology, getting people aware of what we do, and then doing presentations similar to this or on specific topics to people in related fields who are looking for more information. I think there was something that's going to mention there, but I know speech language pathology, when I started out 30 years ago, oftentimes families, people in that time, whether it was speech pathologists in the schools or in the community setting, they often thought, you know, we just take kids to the room and kind of fix them, and all is good. But what I've witnessed over the last 30 years is such a shift in parents and families. We've went from doctors or families saying, oh, we'll just wait till Johnny's in kindergarten. They can deal with it then. It's not a big deal. He'll start talking when he's 5. And physicians also are saying that as well, to people calling us before their child is around a year, you know, concerned. And so the beautiful thing that I witness now is advocacy, families advocating for services that their children need, other professionals advocating, school personnel advocating for these services, because they know the value and they know how it can impact, whether it's an adult who's had a stroke or a child who is delayed, how that will impact them in all areas of their life, but most importantly, even in their education. And so if they're not at the level they should be when they enter school, or they're struggling throughout those early years when those foundational skills need to be established, they will struggle all the time. And we want to make sure that that's not the case. And that's definitely what my business is about. And my ultimate goal for people is just that they can interact well in their community. They can be a functioning member of society in all ways, not just about their talking skills and their language. So areas that we focus on are speech sound skills, oral motor skills and feeding. I'll talk a little bit about each of these. Language skills, social skills, fluency, voice, and swallowing. So I think we're most well known for those speech sound skills, and people think about kids who sound like they have an accent, where they have R difficulties. So it's a moda versus a motor. And so we work on getting kids or people to be able to articulate those sounds, to create words, to create sentences, to create messages. And the sounds, when we look across the ages, because in this work, we can work with kids as early as from birth on, right up to death. So sometimes children are very delayed and have motor impairments where they're not able to produce sounds, or they just are behind in their development, or we have people who have had a stroke and need to learn how to speak again, or they've had a head injury, or they have Parkinson's disease, something like that. So we need to really, look at how can we help these people? And so with lots of our little guys, we're looking at how do we even get them to imitate sounds, how to get them to imitate even motor skills. So are they able to stick out their tongue? Are they able to make a raspberry where they put their lips together and blow and make that sound? Can they attend to us and then demonstrate that skill? And then we keep going up from there and look at those vowels, those consonants, putting them together, putting them into words, and then ultimately sentences and conversation. A big area that's been really developing over the last, well, probably for sure 10 years is feeding. So we work really closely with an occupational therapist, often a dietitian or nutritionist, and we need to make sure that those motor skills for feeding and talking are developing so that they can be able to chew their food properly and different textures of food, and then able to swallow them. And because all of that is related to talking as well. So if you're only on a liquid diet, you're not developing your skills of these muscles. All these fine motor muscles in our face are so important for many things, but very important for feeding skills and for talking. Language, we look at understanding of language and use of language. So little ones who are just learning to talk, we're working on pronoun usage, is in our verbing, prepositions, vocabulary development, both understanding and use. For adults, it might be, again, if there's a stroke or something, just building those skills back up. So they have lost those skills, whereas the little guys have never had those skills. Social skills, we work on with a number of different ages, actually all across the gamut again, but I'm sure everyone's familiar with autism spectrum disorders. So that spectrum is very big. So we're working on these, it could be for that diagnosis or for any other type of diagnosis if people struggle socially, looking at those skills that they need to interact with people in their family and their community in order to be successful. That can be as basic as manners and greetings, but it also is looking at conversations. Can they make comments? Can they ask questions? Can they make those connections within those conversational topics to maintain it and to be a good conversational partner? There's people I work with who have an ability to give me a lot of information about things and are on their topic, but they can't switch topics. They can't follow the lead of someone else. They are unable to really make that connection without cueing that, oh, here's an opportunity to ask a question, or, oh, you know this as well. So make that connection and keep that conversation going. Fluency is looking at, another word for it is stuttering. And so that's people who might block while they're trying to talk, so nothing comes out, or they're repeating a certain portion of their speech. So it could be they're repeating the first sound in words, or a syllable in words, or the whole word, or a whole sentence. It's more significant if they're stuck just on that first sound versus a whole word. But we do work with children on this, lots of school-age kids and then adults as well. It's really has an impact on people if they feel nervous going into a conversation and they are disfluent in that. Then they tend to change their patterns of operating within their life, and so they try to do everything on the computer, or they only enter into certain interactions where they know they can be competent. It becomes more anxiety based and very, very stressful for people. So we really like to work in that area, but it's very challenging. Voice, looking at loudness, pitch, rhythm, and that fluency piece as well. Voice is more of a specialized area. And also abuse of the voice. So it's really important to understand that piece of it is more specialized training, you would specialize in that. There are people who specialize in voice and work, with actors within speech pathology, or performers, singers, those kind of things. But for our little guys, we're working on abuse. Oftentimes, if they're yelling all the time, using a loud voice, or even if they're whispering, that's hard on the voice as well. So, and then finally swallowing, which I think is a little unknown about the work that we do. For a number of years, I worked in the X-ray department, doing video fluoroscopies and monitoring swallowing. So people are actually ingesting some barium, and we're able to watch it go down and make sure that they are not aspirating and that liquid. And then we look at different other textures. So we are able to diagnose and recommend the appropriate food that they should be eating so that they're not at risk for pneumonia. So the equipment, where we work and the equipment that we use, you can find us in hospitals, healthcare centers, extended care centers, schools, colleges, universities. Private practice is actually a large portion of speech pathologists nowadays seem to be doing that. And where we work is such a variety. We are in our offices, our therapy rooms, patient rooms, X-ray departments. I'm lucky enough to be trained in hippotherapy, which is speech therapy in an arena. And so I'm in the arena every week. Community settings such as playgrounds, recreation, and facilities. And I think the most important thing that I want you to understand is that our service is about the client and the family. And so we need to really take a look at that family and what their needs are and meet them where they will be the most effective. So if that means a child needs to be running around and be at the playground while we do our speech therapy, we're going to do that. If they do better in a clinic setting, we're going to be there. And thanks to COVID, teletherapy was around prior to COVID, but it was done on a smaller scale. This year, over the last year, we've all, as of March of 2020, we had a steep curve in learning how to do it. And we are providing therapy online, and that's working well. We oftentimes, with families that we're working with, we're doing some in person, maybe some at the arena, maybe some in a community setting, maybe at home, and then also online as well. So we can really kind of mix and match. Materials, you know, we play for a living, so it's an amazing field to be in. We have our testing materials that we need to use and purchase and keep up to date on. Often a flashlight, because we do orals. We take a look at all the structures and make sure they're working properly. And tongue depressors, books, games, and any specific materials that we would need for each client. And knowing that across those ages, we're still going to be using games. I mean, adults, to work on speech pathology or work on speech skills, there's got to be some motivator in there as well. So, and it needs to be fun. So it's not just for little kids. So the rewards of this field are many. For me, it's about the people. I love meeting with families. I love meeting with clients. And the second point is that detective work. And I know lots of people in different fields are detectives. We really, really are. And we bring our skill to them, but we need to figure them out. And we need to assess both informally through conversation and formally through tests, the strengths of the family or the client and their needs. And then that observation piece too, really observing them within those testing sessions or consultation sessions and meeting sessions. Now we are able to do testing sessions online as well. Some of our tests have been uploaded that we can log into and use those tests online. And even online, we have access to unbelievable amounts of material that we can purchase to use for games and activities and those kind of things. So I really enjoy that detective piece of it, because nobody is the same. Doesn't matter if they have a diagnosis of autism. It's a spectrum, and everybody's environmental background is different. So our job is to figure out how can we use our skill to be the most effective with them. We like helping them to communicate, ultimately to function in the best that they can, both at home, school, work, and in the community. And the biggest thing is to see them succeed. Because I've been in this for a really long time now, I've seen one example is a little one that was actually, was in Saskatchewan, and you know, it was a long time ago, but her family was told that, you know, she wouldn't really develop very much, that they were to lower their expectations for her, which doesn't happen these days anyways. But this, I was able to go to her graduation probably almost 10 years ago, where she graduated with honors. She was a singer. She played 2 or 3 instruments. And so I don't ever want to put lower my expectations for anyone, I guess is my point. That there's no end to where they can go. And I only see them making progress and continued progress as long as we're meeting their needs. And that particular person is now in university, and she will be very successful, but had apraxia of speech, so motor speech involvement. So these muscles were not working properly. And so we had to do a lot of very intensive work to get her to the point where she could speak fairly clearly by the time she went to kindergarten, and then she continued on that journey. So that was definitely a success story. Challenges and stressors always is meeting the needs of the clients. I mean, that's always kind of hanging over you. You're always evaluating in each session, before each session. Are you doing all that you can? Are your materials right? Are your goals right? All of those kind of things. So I think that's my biggest stress. Keeping up with research and continuing education requirements. And there's always, as a professional, there's always things you want to take. There's always courses, and it's a matter of completing those courses and then implementing those skills, which is sometimes hard, right? Because there's so much information and then you need to try to put that into practice. One of the less favorable parts are the reports, the billing, the stats, which I think most people have in their work, and your hours of work may vary is a challenge, and more so now, because I talked about those families who are advocating for their children or for their spouse or an important significant other. People want the service to be there when they can be there. And that's not a bad thing, but it's those hours of work now. It's not necessarily an 8 to 4 and 8 to 5 job anymore. It's different. And I give people credit for that, but I also know that you have to have a bit of a balance as well. Generally, I think the range of salary in a business is $40 to $70 per hour. If you are doing your own private practice, you're going to be billing families a minimum of $100 an hour, anywhere to possibly $200 an hour, but that will be that gross amount. Benefits and pension are both dependent on your employment. So if you're working for Saskatchewan Health or Alberta Health, you're going to have those benefits. Or if you're in an extended care home where you have a union, you're going to possibly have some health benefits and some pension. In my private practice, I am lucky enough to be able to offer my staff not a pension, unfortunately. We looked at that and haven't been able to make that feasible, but we offer a health spending account and continuing education dollars so that they can keep up with that. And then holidays are typically those employment laws, and for us it's 2 weeks to start, on 2 weeks of holidays in that first year, and then it goes up after 5. And work hours are often that 8 to 4, 8 to 5 with healthcare. Private practice is looking a whole lot different these days. We work many days till 6 or 7, and some people have added evenings and weekends. We're not really willing to go there at this point in time, and that's that whole balance piece, which I think is not quite next. Support and PD definitely is required. So as you get into this field, your licensing body will require you to do continuing education units, and you'll have to have goals of things that you're working on, and they audit those and make sure that you're doing all of that. You have to, on all of our billing, we have to provide our license number, and we have to provide all our police checks and our license. Everything has to be provided to some of the contracts that we have. And then unions, if you're in a large organization, you're going to have that support of a union. So opportunities in the field, I said there is usually a demand for SLPs, and I feel like there still is, but it has changed, especially in Alberta. Our current government has decrease some of that funding, unfortunately. So we were one of the provinces for many years that has provided the most support for families and children in those early years. And there's still a fair amount of support, but it's less than it is now. So in those early years and in the school age years, that service looks different. It's more consultative, and a number of SLPs have been laid off. So like I say, I still think there's a lot of work out there. So that's not the issue necessarily, because we know families are advocating for that service now and are really willing, if in any way that they can, to make sure that their family member gets that extra support. And again, I've touched on this a little bit about the specialization. So there are people who specialize in voice, there are people who specialize in swallowing, in adult services, in early intervention, that birth to 3, in school age. So the opportunities are endless within this field, and then you can specialize even in reading in school age children, or maybe more so in stroke patients, or I've had a lot of children with Fragile X or rare syndromes. So that's a challenge. So it's a very diverse field and very, very interesting, and it does keep you on your toes. We're lucky enough, we get to work often with a team around us, occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychologists, social workers, teachers, early childhood educators are some of the people. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on speech language pathology assistants. So we are fortunate here in Medicine Hat, within Medicine Hat College, they have an assistant program. And I've been part of that, teaching in that, and now I'm just on the advisory board for it. But SLPAs, as they're known, are critical in our field. We often provide the testing and that information, and if it's appropriate, we'll have the speech assistant do that work with the family and the client. So that's another option to look at. The program here at the college has occupational therapy assistant, physical therapy assistant, and speech language pathology assistant programs. And it's a 2-year program. And if you want to specialize in all 3, so you can do OTA and PTA as 1 unit, or if you wanted to have the specialization of having all 3, that's a 3-year program. Otherwise it's 2. And I think there is a demand for that designation as well in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, and in BC that I know of. So we have 2 speech assistants that work with us currently, and we can't do without them. So that work-life balance, I just left those bullets just the way they are, because the hours, if you're in healthcare, like I said, might be that 8 to 4, and then you get to go home and you don't think about it again. If you're in private practice, it's a whole different ballgame. Those hours often extend into the evening. You're often doing paperwork on the weekends. You maybe have a little more flexibility for time off then, because you can just book it off, whereas it's a little bit different if you're in a large organization and you have to think about applying for that time off and those holidays and that kind of thing. Overtime, there's a fair amount of overtime, depends on your employer again, if they will permit that. But within our business, we allow my employees, they do bank that overtime and then they're able to use it. But really, as an employer, it's hard to know. You have to strike a balance, because you can't have everybody working 10-hour days or 12-hour days. We can't burn them out. So that's, I have to be really careful and mindful of that, because I need to keep people healthy. And you'll see a picture there. That is one of our arena sessions. And so what we do here, I'll just give you a little brief overview, is we use the movement of the horse to work all the muscles, right from the pelvis all the way through the core and into the facial muscles. And actually the research now is showing that is rewiring, that movement, that rhythmic movement of the horse is rewiring the pathways within the brain, and hopefully helping people be able to process information better and speak more clearly. And so this is more specialized, and we have specialized in it here. There's only a few places in Canada that offer this service. It's a little bit more prevalent in the US, but we only prescribe it when we feel it would be appropriate. But the feedback from kids, adults, is that it is very effective. They get to build a relationship with the horse. They benefit from the warmth of the horse. They're doing different movements. They might be on all fours on the back of the horse. They might be backwards. They might be sideways. They might be on their belly over the barrel of the horse or the rump of the horse. So there's lots of, that's a whole nother session in itself, but I just wanted to touch on that because it just shows how diverse our field is. And then, yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you, Sandra. This was really good. Now, the hippotherapy is really cool, and you've experienced quite a bit of success with that, correct?
We have, yes, actually, we've had, we've been doing it now for, gosh, 5 years, I guess, or actually more, because one of my other staff started a few years before, so probably 8 years. And we have a range of people that take part in this, and it is a speech therapy session, but our modality, the location is at the arena, and we're using the movement of the horse. So what happens with that movement, it's very regulating, but it's also very stimulating. So if we think of a child with autism who might be running high or running too low, that movement, once they are able to take advantage of that, that helps them to get in a just right state so that they can do the speech work that we need them to do. And like I say, it's very motivating. They love coming to the arena. I mean, there's some that actually have to work into that. We do have some sessions where the first they might be screaming and crying, but it's very short-lived typically. And they wear a helmet, a belt, and I have a sidewalker on the far side of the horse. And I'm on one side, and then the horse handler's at the front. We work in the arena, in the yard, we go up hills, we go down hills, we use the trees, we use nature. And so there's so much language in the environment, and there's cats and there's dogs and so many different things. There's the horse is pooping, the horse is peeing, all of that is language. So we get to use all of that. But you know, there's been many children who have started with us who, I mean, there's one specific child who hadn't said a word, and the parents actually walked around the arena with us. They drove from Calgary for these sessions, and that little guy said his first word on the horse. And so we had parents in tears, and it was quite a good feeling to hear that little guy vocalize and try to say words. And that we've had adult stroke patients on as well, helping them to learn to speak again. Kids with autism who can get to that just right state, follow more directions, try to, you know, if they're learning to speak or formulate sentences and those kind of things. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool. Thanks so much. We're just going to close the door here. It got a little loud. I just have a quick question about the assistant program.
Mm-hmm.
I always think in terms of a student that may not want to specifically leave the country to do this, but is there any transition from the assistant program into your role, say, or is it totally two different programs? I know sometimes the certificates and diplomas you know, leaf off into the diploma program. Is that the case with this, or is it totally different?
I wouldn't say it's completely different. There is a bit of a bridge as far as I'm aware of, because I know there have been some people who complete the assistant program, and we've actually encouraged them to go on to be an SLP. They have, and my understanding is once they've got that diploma here, and they've, you know, decided, well, I really want to be a speech path or an occupational therapist or whatever. There is another, it's a degree in rehabilitation, I think, that they go on to in Calgary, but I think it could be in anything. Once you have that degree piece, so they'll use your diploma credits. I think most of them will meet their guidelines, and then they have to do extra coursework to get their degree, and then they apply to a master's program. So my understanding is that there is that bridge that then they can get to that point where they can apply to a master's program. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know. And I'm sure students will appreciate knowing that as well too. So that's
Yeah.
So what attracted you, Sandy, to speech pathology?
Whew. You know, I just learned about it in high school, truthfully, and I thought it was just very intriguing. And so I was able to go to in North Battleford, to the local Saskatchewan Health Community office, and community health is what it was called. And I was able to observe the SLP working. And we do have those requests here. And with the therapist assistant program, which is the SLPA, OTA, PTA, they do job shadowing in the first part of their program so they can become more aware and figure out where they want to specialize. And then of course there's practicums and all that. But I was able to watch her, learn about it, and make that decision to go forward. I think prior to that, you know, I grew up with a home for the severely mentally retarded. At that time, that's what it was called, in North Battleford, across the street. And then right next door to that was a school for mentally retarded or mentally challenged people. And then my elementary school was next to that. And we were lucky enough to be able to go and be involved in programs and physical activity with the students at the school next to us. And then I know I was able to go across the street and visit with people in the home. And, you know, I guess that helping piece of it, it is such a rewarding field. And I know PTs and OTs would say the same. But I think my view here is, if you can't walk, you can go in a wheelchair, you can have a walker, or you can learn to walk again, definitely. And occupational therapy looks at those self-help skills, activities of daily living, fine motor, those kind of things. So you can have, you know, you can have a raised toilet seat, or you can do different things like that. But if you can't speak to people, they don't come to visit. And so there's not a lot that we can do. Like, it's very isolating. So that, for me, gets me right in my heart, because I think we know, actually, with COVID right now, how important that social interaction is, and being away from people, or even socially distanced, not being able to shake hands is just so unusual and so isolating. And so if you think of someone who's not able to speak or has lost their speech, and, you know, people come for a while to talk to you, but, you know, if there's nothing going back and forth, oftentimes life is very difficult and very sad. And so my goal is to make sure that people have that ability to connect with people in whatever way they can. One thing I didn't mention too was part of our work is with augmentative communication. So looking at devices, so an iPad, or different devices that allow them to speak to people if they can't verbally talk. So I did miss that. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sandy. Communication is key, really, to our existence, and the difference that you make, you know, from taking kids that were nonverbal and having them graduate, absolutely huge. So thank you very much for sharing your passion and your career specialty. I hope that this will help students who are looking at this field to understand what it entails, and the extra work, and all the extra education that you'll be expected to do along the way, because it's a constantly changing field. And hopefully we'll see some good people following in your footsteps. So thank you very much for taking the time out to present to the students today.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot, Sandy. That was very good.